will listen to a message from Kirtani and Anand, a message on Easter and how we can live Easter more deeply. This will be very short because we inserted this at the very last minute, but we wanted all of you to thank you. And it's wonderful to see the temple so full this morning of Easter. And also for all of you at home, thank you for being here with us at the ceremony of light. Today, there are two great opportunities for us to absorb the blessings of this day. You have already received great inspiration from this morning's meditation, from Holy Friday meditation, up until this morning. And now we will celebrate the ceremony of light, which is an opportunity for each one of us to open up to receive this Christ's light, and then to be able to share this light with all the joy of this day. And I want to cite a phrase from the ceremony to give us an important indication on how we can always evermore live in this joy and light. In the ceremony of light, it says that pain is the fruit of self-love, egoism, whereas joy is the fruit of love for God. And this is what Jesus has shown to us and what he lived in his life. Unconditional love to his Father, and then sharing this love with all of us. That is the greatest message of the life of Jesus, this love that we want to be able to expand within us every day, more and more, to be able to bring it here on earth, to bring peace through love for every human being, for every creature. And the other thing that we will do today, tonight, is we have rehearsed a lot for tonight's concert, even if maybe it didn't seem like that before, because it is rare that we sing the whole oratory from Swami Kriyananda. Christ lives in the Holy Land and within you. Swami Kriyananda's oratory. And tonight's concert includes quotations and moments of inspiration from Christ's life and Christ's tests, and to listen to the translation of these songs before we sing them is so beautiful. And one of the passages that I want to underline is this: we have passed now through Christ's pain of Easter Friday, of Holy Friday. So he's going through the pain. And in the oratory it says that the pain of Christ was not for himself. He was in pain for humanity that could not understand the love of the Father, of humanity that is lost in the forests of ignorance. Another quotation is this, where we listen to the fact that the ego inhibits us, blocks us on our path towards the infinite light. And in this moment of the oratory, I invite you tonight to listen with all your heart, with all your soul, and the same for the ceremony of light, feel it with all your being. Feel that you are part of the ceremony of light and of the oratory Christ lives tonight. So we wish you a wonderful day filled with light and love and peace.
Anche di forse aiutarvi a superare la vostra.
And also to help you to overcome your pain, I want to speak in English instead of in Italian.
Okay. So first I wanted to just say how nice it is to see so many old friends.
Voglio dire come prima cosa quanto è bello vedere tantissimi vecchi amici.
Darshan just recently reminded us that Swami had said this Ananda family has been together a long time.
Darshan mi ha ricordato giusto l'altro giorno che Swami ci ha detto che la famiglia di Ananda è stata insieme da tantissimo tempo.
And so it's special occasions like this that we see so many of our old friends also come together again with us, and it's a great joy.
E quindi è una grandissima gioia vedere in occasioni speciali come questa tanti vecchi amici che ci riuniamo di nuovo insieme.
Another thing, just very briefly, one of my friends recently said, "Anand, you look like a Easter egg that wasn't very well done, wasn't very well colored."
Molto brevemente, un amico mi ha detto l'altro giorno: Anand, tu assomigli a un uovo di Pasqua che non è stato pitturato molto bene, però.
So, just so you're wondering, this is a dermatology treatment, and it often looks worse first before it looks better.
E quindi se vi chiedete cosa mi sta succedendo, sto facendo un trattamento dermatologico che sembra peggio di quello che è.
So I won't take long, but I wanted to just briefly paraphrase something that Yogananda says.
E non prenderò molto tempo, ma voglio parafrasare brevemente qualcosa che ha detto Yogananda.
He said the Spirit of God is this vast, if you will, ocean of consciousness.
Lui ha detto che lo Spirito di Dio è questo vasto oceano di coscienza.
It is without movement, it is still, it is omnipresent, and it is blissful.
È senza movimento, è calmo, è pieno di beatitudine.
It exists behind this energy world that we're all so much involved with.
Ed esiste dietro il mondo dell'energia con il quale siamo così coinvolti.
And the way Swami explains it is that God, this Spirit, took a portion of his consciousness and he moved that consciousness.
E Swami lo spiega così, che Dio, lo Spirito, ha preso una porzione, una parte della sua coscienza e ha iniziato a muoverla.
And that consciousness manifests as light.
E questa coscienza si manifesta come luce.
And Yogananda said that very primordial light, from that one light of spirit comes all the other forms and suns and galaxies and bodies.
E Yogananda spiega che da questa luce primordiale si forma tutta l'altra luce, tutte le galassie, tutti i soli, tutti i pianeti si formano da questa luce primordiale.
And the New Testament says of Christ that Christ is the light and the life of men.
E nel Nuovo Testamento dice che Cristo è la luce e la vita degli uomini.
That this light is responsible for creation.
E questa luce è responsabile, è il motore della creazione.
And we have to experience that light in order to know the Father that is behind creation.
E noi dobbiamo sperimentare questa luce per conoscere il Padre dietro la creazione.
So when God held this thought of the universe,
E quindi quando Dio teneva questo pensiero dell'universo,
just an idea that has potential, but it is the idea of creation.
era solo un'idea con del potenziale, però era solo l'idea della creazione.
The idea that atoms and light and energy and galaxies and suns, that was his idea, his sun, if you will, his creation.
L'idea delle galassie, della luce, dei soli, dei pianeti, questo si può dire era la sua idea, il suo figlio.
And then God said, I thought I'm going to individualize myself so that I can go in and experience every aspect of this creation that I am manifesting.
E poi Dio ha pensato, ha detto, io mi renderò individuale, in modo che posso sperimentare proprio da dentro la mia creazione.
But he also realized that when I individualize myself and go into this creation, I'm going to lose the memory of my divine, omnipresent, eternal self.
Ma ha anche capito che quando io mi individualizzo e vado dentro la mia creazione, perderò la memoria da dove vengo, del mio della mia origine,
Eternal.
del sé immortale, eterno.
But he built a fail-safe system so that those when he individualized himself, those individuals would never be lost completely.
Ma ha creato un sistema in modo che questi spiriti individualizzati potevano non perdersi e tornare indietro.
And so, at the very top of his creation, he created the humans.
E quindi lui ha creato nella cima più alta della sua creazione gli esseri umani.
We are the only species, if you will, the only creature that actually has the nervous system to reflect upon itself and realize again its divinity.
Noi siamo l'unica specie, l'uniche creature che hanno un sistema nervoso tale che possiamo riflettere su noi stessi e capire da dove siamo venuti veramente.
And that's what Christ, and that's what all the masters, and that's what we all are in potential.
Ed è quello che Cristo, che tutti i grandi maestri e anche tutti noi siamo, tutti noi potenzialmente.
What Christ and the masters are asking us is that we resurrect ourselves from this mortal identification and remember our divinity.
È questo che ci chiede Cristo, che ci chiedono i grandi maestri, e che noi risuscitiamo dalla nostra coscienza mortale e ci uniamo allo spirito immortale.
So my wish for you is that we together resurrect ourselves in the light of spirit.
E quindi il mio desiderio per tutti noi è che possiamo risorgere nella luce di Cristo,
In the light of Christ.
nella luce dello Spirito.
And I want to just remind us of one thing.
E voglio ricordarci una cosa.
When we do the festival today,
Quando oggi celebreremo la cerimonia della luce,
there's the part where it says that we, as self-aware beings, have come up through dim corridors of awakening.
c'è la parte dove dice che noi come esseri individualizzati abbiamo passati dei passaggi bui della coscienza.
We've all been on this long voyage of individuality up through dim corridors of different aspects of God's creation.
Tutti noi abbiamo passati individualmente tutti questi passaggi che attraversa tutta la creazione di Dio, passaggi anche bui.
This festival tells that story.
E la cerimonia racconta questa storia.
And the last point I want to leave with you
E voglio lasciarvi con l'ultimo punto.
is that Christ said, and the Bible says that we must be still to know God.
Cristo, la Bibbia dice che dobbiamo essere calmi, immobili per conoscere Dio.
That we must be absolutely calm mentally in order to perceive that light.
E che dobbiamo essere totalmente calmi nella mente per poter conoscere questa luce.
So please put special emphasis today when you come up to receive the touch of light.
E quindi oggi, quando verrete in avanti per ricevere il tocco di luce,
It's not about which minister you go to.
non si tratta del fatto da quale ministro andate per riceverla,
It's how calm can you mentally produce in your mind in order to perceive that light
ma la
behind the touch.
cosa più importante in quel momento è di quanto riesci ad essere calmo mentalmente per ricevere il tocco di luce.
Very, very happy Easter to you all.
E quindi buona Pasqua a tutti voi.
Resurrection for every soul. Truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it in your deathless self within. The following commentary is based on the teachings of Paramahansa Yogananda. In the Gospel of St. John, chapter 20, we read the inspiring account of Jesus' resurrection. The first day of the week, cometh Mary Magdalene early, when it was yet dark, unto the sepulchre, and seeth the stone taken away from the sepulchre. Then she runneth, and cometh to Simon Peter and to the other disciple whom Jesus loved, and said unto them, They have taken away the Lord. Then the same day at evening, being the first day of the week, when the doors were shut where the disciples were assembled for fear of the Jews, came Jesus, and stood in their midst, and saith unto them, Peace be unto you. The resurrection of Jesus, doubted by many, but affirmed by those who were close to him, was a miraculous event, though one not unique in history. For many great saints of other religions have appeared to their disciples after death. Sometimes their appearances have been as that of Jesus was, in flesh and blood form, and not only in vision. Paramahansa Yogananda relates in Autobiography of a Yogi the account of his Guru Sri Yukteswar's resurrection after his earthly passing. Miracles of this type are revealed only rarely to the masses, but accounts of them, related by men and women of reputed truthfulness, have inspired many devotees with faith in the reality of subtler than material states of existence. Resurrection, Yogananda explained, means transformation, ultimately from any lower state of being to a higher one. Worldly consciousness cannot imagine such transformation, except in terms of perhaps an improvement of the present mess of pottage with the addition of a new flavoring. Divine consciousness, however, is capable of making the base metal of worldliness and transforming it into the spiritual gold of divine wisdom and love. In keeping with this truth, the Bhagavad Gita in the 9th chapter tells us, ye who into this ill world are come, fleeting and false, set your faith fast on me. Fix heart and thought on me. Adore me. Bring offerings to me. Make me prostrations. Make me your supremest joy. And undivided, unto my rest your spirits shall be guided. Thus, through Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind. Good morning and happy Easter Sunday to everyone. Yesterday evening we have had a kirtan and a purification ceremony to prepare ourselves to receive fully the blessings of this day. And I remember when I arrived, I looked at this beautiful altar and I thought, oh, Jesus is getting married tomorrow, because it seems like a marriage altar. And in a sense it is a wedding. A wedding that mystics would call a mystical marriage, this complete union, unrevocable, of the soul with the infinite spirit. And what I want to look at today a little bit is that the reading of today is the resurrection for every soul. And I want to look a little bit on what resurrection means for each one of us, but from a particular point of view. So I want to start reading to you this quotation by Swami Kriyananda. By Yogananda. He says, you can go through all the emotions and experiences of Christ, and by your wisdom you can rise above them and conquer. If you can meditate on your Father, someday you will go through the experiences of Christ. So bring Christ closer, mentally go through resurrection and through the crucifixion of Christ, and you will get the lesson that he learned. But you must meditate deeply upon it. It can be done. You can attain understanding and devotion by meditation upon his experiences. Kirtani mentioned before that tonight we will sing the oratory on Christ's life. It is called Christ Lives, and it's such a deep moment of meditating on his life, to not only listen to the words but also through the music receive the consciousness that also his disciples have lived. And this is what I want to do in the coming next 10 minutes, to look at his experiences from his disciples' point of view, which are closer to us. Yes, we can think about the experience of the great avatars, but it's easier to look at the disciples, like the experiences of Swami Kriyananda are closer to us, because he is a disciple. He shows us how to be in contact with this divine consciousness. So let's look a little bit on the experiences of his disciples. So you can imagine, we have just read in the reading, Mary Magdalene ran towards the tomb the first day of the week and found it empty. And then she ran to call the other disciples. But what the Gospel of St. John doesn't say, but another Gospel says, is that before she came back, she saw a person dressed in white cloth, and she thought it was the gardener. And it was a gardener, but it was the gardener of a very elevated gardener, a very elevated garden. And it's interesting because she talked to him and she asked him, did you take my Lord? Where did you take him? Give him so that I can bring him back. And then he called her Mary. And in that moment, she recognized him. The divine call is always there for us. But when we answer this call, then we can recognize it. What Anand has just said is that Jesus entered into this consciousness, like Yogananda said, he entered into the spirit and came back filled with divine power and wisdom. And every fiber of his being, every cell, every thought, every feeling vibrated with this infinite consciousness, divine consciousness that is present in every atom, in every person, in every grass, in every particle of this universe. And his consciousness was so changed that Mary couldn't recognize him. And she's not the only one. You know that also the other disciples that met Jesus walking somewhere, I don't remember where, they saw him, but they didn't recognize him immediately because his consciousness was so elevated that they first had to open themselves, attune themselves with his consciousness, with his presence, in order to recognize him. And imagine how great their inner resurrection was too. Their change of consciousness once they have had recognized him. In order to really understand it, we need to put it into context. 1 week before, on Palm Sunday, the moment when Jesus entered into Jerusalem in a majestic way, he was proclaimed Messiah by all people, the King of Israel. People were dancing on the streets and singing and putting in front of him the palm leaves or even their clothes because they didn't want his feet or not even the animal on which Jesus was riding should touch the soil. So there was such a deep devotion, and it was the first time that Jesus permitted them to express their devotion, because many times before they wanted to proclaim him the Messiah, but he didn't permit it. And now imagine how he enters in this glory, Jerusalem, and the following days he enters into the synagogue, into churches. He was teaching and he was ever more direct. Also, he was he was discussing with the Pharisees. And then Thursday evening, the Last Supper. But the disciples didn't know it would be the Last Supper. We know it now. But imagine for them, what would you have thought? The Master that you know for years or maybe months, and you have seen this Master bringing people back to life or feeding thousands of people by multiplying fishes. You have seen your Master expressing his divinity, and then you come to the Last Supper where Jesus was very direct to his disciples on whom he was really. And the disciples said, Jesus talked to us in parables, but in this moment he talked to us in a very direct way. What would you have thought? What would have happened? What do you think would have happened to you? I think no one could imagine what was going to happen. Even if Jesus had told them at this Last Supper, he said, where I go, you cannot follow me. But he also knew that the moment after would be the challenge, the supreme test in the life of his disciples. So he did everything to infuse into them his consciousness, his faith, to put them into contact with the divine. And we all know the phrase, I am the path, the truth, and the life, and no one can achieve to the Father if not through me. But I don't know how many people think about when did he say this phrase. He said it at the Last Supper because he wanted to give to his disciples the perception of the divine. He was telling them, yes, you need to go through a very difficult time and you need to grasp onto my inner presence within you. And it's interesting because he said this phrase right after he said, Where I go, you cannot follow me. And then he said, but I will show you the way. And then maybe the disciple said, but if we cannot follow you, what is the way? And then he said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. And imagine that they have met this master, and then he's taken away from them, not only his physical presence, but all of a sudden, their master is killed in the most cruel way. What would you have thought? What would you have felt as a disciple? Everyone thought, now he's going to proclaim himself as the Messiah. The Romans will be chased away, and he's going to proclaim himself King of Israel, because they knew the prophecy of the Messiah, but they thought it was a prophecy on the mundane, on exterior level. And then all of a sudden, he's crucified. What is so interesting is that Swami Kriyananda talks about it, and he explains that this test was a test of love. Often in our lives, in our most difficult moments, we think that God is testing our resistance. How much can I resist? I'm miserable. He's testing me how much I can resist. But what God is really testing is our love. How much do you love? Do I love? Even if I cannot do what I think I should do. Even when I think I'm a failure. When I think I'm condemned, I'm wrong. He's testing how much do I love. During the Last Supper, when Jesus says, I need to go where no one can follow me. And the famous phrase of Peter who says, but Lord, I will follow you always, even through death. And you know his answer. Jesus says, Peter, before this animal sings 3 times, you will neglect me 3 times. And then he says something very interesting. He says, but I prayed to the Father that your faith will not fail. And once you have been reconquered, you will protect also my other disciples. He knew what was going to happen. And he says even, I have prayed for you so that God can give you the strength to grasp onto my presence, even in all the darkness around you. And it's interesting, in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says that there's 4 types of disciples. One is a type of disciple that calls God only when he needs him. Who can identify with this disciple at least sometimes? The second type is a disciple that calls God to ask for understanding. Not only I need help, but please help me to understand. Because imagine, when Jesus died and resurrected, 3 days passed, but I think for his disciples it seemed like eternity, these 3 days, when everything they had learned was put on for a test. They saw their master resurrecting people. They saw their master in pure light. They saw their master performing miracles. They were convinced he was the Messiah, he was going to change the world, and then all of a sudden, he's dead. The material reality that clashes against the inner perception of the divine. And how many times does this happen in our lives when we have a deep understanding, where we achieve a deep inner communion with the divine, and then a great crisis happens in our lives, a karmic bomb explodes, and we need to learn how to handle the perception, the inner perception that we have achieved in this outer world. And the third type of a disciple, Krishna says, is a disciple who asks the power to overcome. Okay, I want to understand, but I also want to have the power to overcome the test that you give me. And the fourth disciple, the fourth devotee, is the already wise devotee. Krishna says is the devotee who's already wise, because he knows that whatever happens comes from God and comes for him through God. So his comprehension, his understanding, his strength is put on a test, also his inner relationship with God, but his love, the love of that devotee, never fails. And what is important for us to understand, also Peter, who neglected Jesus 3 times, he was not whatever disciple. All the people who were around Jesus, when Jesus was crucified, only John remained with his mother, with Jesus' mother. But all the disciples really had perceived the Christ consciousness incarnated in Jesus. So they were not people just taking off the street. They had an inner perception, but they had also a big test of Maya that would bring them to question, to doubt everything. And what gave them the answer? What do you think? Where did the answer come from? Do you think the answer came through their experiences or through the miracles they had seen? No. The power they experienced within was through love. All experiences, if they are not based on increasing the love of the heart through the experiences, have no power. And in order to close, after Jesus appears to the disciples after his resurrection at the lake, and he talked to many of the disciples, and then he's walking with Peter, who neglected him for 3 times, and he looks at Peter and says, "Do you love me?" And Peter answers, "But yes, of course, my Lord, you know that I love you." And they continue to talk. And after a while, "Peter, do you love me?" "But of course, my Lord, you know that I love you." The third time, Jesus asks, "Peter, do you love me?" And Peter says, "My Lord, you know that I love you." And all the rest, all the darkness vanishes. That is the lesson for us as disciples, greater than resurrection. Whatever we have to go through, and we all have difficult moments, when the divine presence comes back, because even in the most dark moments, we have to grasp onto the divine. And when God asks us, "Do you love me?" we answer, "Of course I love you." And all the rest is taken away. Happy Easter to everyone.